Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Happy to meet you once again to another edition of Historical Discourses series of Babu for Heritage YouTube channel. If you like these videos and other things, please share with others and help spread the heritage awareness. In today's edition, we are going to see about the Cholas and their military might, how it is structured. Let me share the video. This presentation was done last month, 26th October, on Saturday. Thanks to an invite from Vishayandu Vidya Kendra and Indological Research Institute and K.V. Ramakrishna Rao, we had a good session in Tinagar, Chennai about heritage of Cholas. This is lecture number 10 in the series, and this is about Imperial Cholas armed forces. Since there was no recording facility at that point of time, I had done a re-recording of the content with some modification based on the queries and clarifications raised during the discussion to make it more explicit. So here we are going to see the re-recording, which is in a far more relaxed, with more time to cover the points in detail. Let us go into the slides. Before we go into the actual presentation, I want to give credits to the internet, the umbilical internet, and Google Endeavor for the photo and context. Wikipedia Pujari, he give any subject, he gives a beautiful collection, but it may not be validated. But what I look at Wikipedia is for the references, and from the references I go to the original authors and draw my own conclusions. And also, I have taken some of the content inspired by THT Sridharan Ganapathi's talk on Chola Military expedition, which was very, very vast. It spanned 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I tried to make some of the facts in a far more visual way here. In terms of books read, these are the following reference books. Instead of going into a detailed research, this is the books and references contents which I have relied upon. The Cholas, History of South India influences by Nilakanta Sastri, later Cholas by Sadasiva Bhandarata. He being a later one with far more access to some of the more detailed facts, has got a slightly contradictory view from Nilakanta Sastri. And the great book, Tennattu Porkalangal by K.N. Appadure, which gives a chronological list of all the wars that has happened since Sangam till late Vijayanagara period. And again, a good collection of essays, Nagapatnam to Swarnadipa, and some of the papers, issues of statecraft by Gautam, and an extensive book by Kodavayal Balasubramaniam, where some content on the Ganges expedition has been taken. And the last by my host and the mentor for IRI, Shri K.V. Ramakrishna Rao, who has done a fairly detailed paper on shipping technology of Cholas in the 27th South Indian History Congress. So this has been some of the references. Wherever possible, if it is from a pointed source, I have given the source on the bottom itself. So Imperial Cholas. When we talk about Imperial Cholas, we talk about the middle period Cholas who maintained a fantastic dynasty for a long period of time. So let us see why Cholas were talked about for such a long history and lot of credit on this. So most of these factors primarily depend on the following key points. Most dominant dynasty ruled for 400 years, and actually the crown prince worked with the monarch earlier on. So it was announced, and in many cases they also started giving inscriptions from the early days. So they focused on their core areas, governance, and then its well-being. And it is supplemented by strong relationship with the feudatories around Tamil Nadu, which has again expanded with a very good buffer zone of vassals, whom they have won and whom they have friendly relationship, and they were paying dues. And because of supporting and having good network with their merchants, they had very vast influence area across Southeast Asia due to their network. They had massive offensive and defensive forces in terms of army, navy, and mercantile force. Three forms of military, army, navy, and mercantile force. So these factors contributed to their success. So each of these components we will see in detail in the next 1 hour. So they also used this organization to do expeditions, plunders, and wars for expansion. When we talk about Cholas, they were small. Till Sangam period, they have been surviving, and they were staying in Urayur and gradually moved to near Thanjavur. But what was a deciding factor in their early period was a Tirupurambiyam war, where it is Pallavas against Pandyas, which were the dominating force at that point of time. This Tirupurambiyam is near Kumbakonam, which is Kumbakonam is here, and there is a Kollur river, and this is the area where open land and other things are there. So normally during that time, wars used to happen near riverbeds where there is a lot of open space, option for cleaning, and option for water, and option for burning the dead, and very convenient location. So typically, people get settled in riverbeds as a military base and also do a lot of fighting there. So Tirupurambiyam, Pallava king Aparajitavarman, who was at the time, attacked Pandyas, and Pandya Varaguna also amassed, and this fight happened in a neutral country in Chola area, which is at that time a common boundary for both. Pallava at the time was supported by Ganga Prithivipati, who is related, family related, matrimonial related to them. And also, in this popularly, it was said that Chola Vijayalaya took place as per Pondiyin Selvan and other things, uh, fictions and other stories. The popular story is that Vijayalaya, the king with 67 wounds, and who has lost both his legs utilization and is paralytic below. Still, he came into the this war atop a person and fought and then started changing the course of the war. It was evenly balanced, but Pallavas were having a heavy defeat and Vijayalaya came in and turned the lead. There is a story. But actually, before this, Vijayalaya has already passed away and his son Aditya took place in the war. So this is a turning point in Tamil Nadu history. And it was a heavy victory for Chola and Vijayalaya side, Pallava side. But the fun part is the victor and loser, Pallava and Pandya, got heavily damaged in this war and weakened. And Cholas got full authority to rule in Tanjavur and started accumulating locations around that place. Finally, at a later part of time, there is conflict between Aparajita and Aditya, and in a war, finally, Aditya kills Aparajita and takes full control of the Pallava region. His son Parandaka expands the country from Tonde Mandalam and expands all the way up to Pandyas. So on one side, they occupy Pallavas, and later next king starts occupying Pandya Mandalam also. So this is how the starting from Vijayalaya and then Aditya who supported the Tirupurambiyam, and next Gandhaditya was a fairly benign king who was more focused on temple building, and after this Arinjaya lived for a short period, and then Parandaka too, Sundara Chola took over and ruled for 13 years. And after that, originally Gandharaditya's son was supposed to be ruled because he was young at the time Arinjaya and Parandaka too took over. So Parandaka's son Rajaraja Chola, he left over the ruling to Gandharaditya's son Uttama, who ruled for 15 years, and later on Rajaraja took over. So this is the period where the slow consolidation takes place, and they become large. But again, this consolidation took a setback during Parandaka period. One of the deciding wars which showed lot of lessons, military lessons, is 940 War of Takkolam between Rashtrakutas. Rashtrakutas have been at loggerheads from Cholas due to a earlier hair dispute, and they didn't like Parandaka coming to the throne instead of the other person who was Rashtrakuta prince. So there is imminent war, and the Chola prince Rajaditya has been stationed near Takkolam, near Arakonam, near Madras. So, as expected, Rashtrakuta Kannadeva, Krishna III invaded, and he was defended by Rajaditya, who was a prince who was stationed as the military camp there. To support Rashtrakuta, their nephew Ganga Bhutuka also came along with them, and Banas who were supporting Bhutuka were also behind Bhutuka. Chola, there is one more prince whose one more son, brother, who was not the prince of Chola at the time, he was also available along with the general Velan Kumaran. Again, this took place on the riverbed where the Kuam river starts. This is called Takkolam, and there is a vast open space near the river, and this is where the actual war happened. So, outcome is Rajaditya was killed by Bhutaka in a direct fight, where Bhutaka climbs up Rajaditya's elephant and kills him by his sword or arrow. But this inscription was misread by many of the Tamil countries, and they said still they couldn't accept the death of Rajaditya in a straight war, and they say that he was killed in a treacherous way. But the inscriptions by Bhutaka and the panels in one of his temples there, which he has graphically depicted, it is mentioned as a very clear fight where he overcome the elephant and then climbed up. So the lesson learned here is that structured formation and protection layers for the king was not implemented well. So the culture is the king leading from front and then fighting, and by any stray arrow or something, if he hits him, gone. So this is what happened in this case. Again, when the dealer dies, there is no fallback on regular by any of these other guys didn't put in front and then started managing the problem. The Chola army got dejected, straight away defeated, and they lost, they backed up. So Rashtrakuta pushed all the way and then occupied Kanjipuram and all these areas, and it took more than 40 years until Rajaraja times they couldn't be evicted. Gangas also become very strong and started exerting more influence in the northeast area, along with the Rashtrakutas. So, a similar war happened in very late Vijayanagara also, where in the war with sultans, Sadasiva Raya, who was very old, 80 plus, was on the forefront. And based on sudden turn of events, from the palanquin where he was fighting, he tried to shift to backup and then tried to board an elephant. In the meantime, the frontline forces of Muslims captured his, and he was taken and straight away beheaded. His head was put on a long spear and shown to the entire battlefield, say that your king is dead. So, with so many generals, the entire Vijayanagara army panicked, and there were no second defenses, and they ran away all the way back to Vijayanagara capital. So, there are parallels in this kind of emotional and frontline battles. So, this is a lesson learned, and which was later structured in a refined way from Rajaraja times. And again, after killing the Pallava kingdom, the attention turns towards Pandya. This is where a 400 years animosity is sown, and it is kept alive by continuous batting, and finally it led to the downfall of Cholas. Veerapandya at the time attacked against the common area, Pudukkottai, which is between Madurai and Tanjavur. This is a place where it happened, Chevoor. It is a open area with a lot of boulders and hiding places. From Chola, Arigula led from front, and Arinjaya was also there. So the outcome of the war, Arikilakesi are dead on the war, and Pandyas titled as Chola Konda Veera Pandian. So this means that the person who beheaded or killed Chola prince. This has become a very bad black mark on the Cholas, and then they were itching for revenge. And in 958, Aditya Karigala, along with Pallava Parthivendra and Kodumbalur Pudi Vikramakesari, again attacked Veerapandian in another skirmish. This was more of a brief war where Veerapandya lost heavily and he was hiding, and then finally he was hunted down in a manhunt and then found and killed. So to repeat what it was there, all the three took part in the battle, took a title Veerapandiyan Talagunda. That means the person who killed Veerapandya or beheaded Veerapandya. So this continuous animosity, and Aditya Karigala was killed in a plot and murdered by Pandya spies and then supporters, along with some of the connivance from Chola senior members. This animosity continued for the next generations in a continuous engagement. And finally, in 1257, Cholas lost completely, and then they were subdued as the feudatories of Pandyas. When we talk about the Imperial Cholas, this covers from Rajaraja to Kulothunga, where these were the kings who set the things right and built a grand empire, which survived for another 152 years till it declined to a gradual death. The key foundation was done by Rajaraja, who first captured Madurai, Kandalur Salai, Vengi, Talakkad, and Ceylon, Gulbarga, Banavasi, and expanded it to almost all Tamil Nadu and sections of Andhra as well as Karnataka. The next king, Rajendra, continued his captured full Sri Lanka, Kalinga, and then he did two great expeditions, Ganges expedition and also Sri Vijaya naval expedition. We will see about it later. Rajendra had three sons who ruled one after another. The interesting part is most of Rajaraja's victories here with the star was done by Rajendra. Most of Rajendra's victories with the star was done by his sons. So like that, the princes took part in a war in front and ensured that the king doesn't die suddenly. And the king takes care of the headquarters and other things. So all the princes had very good training in war, even when they were young. So Rajaraja took part in Kolhapur and then he died in Koppam. And immediately Rajendra took over and then he continued with the Chalukya wars, Rohana, and then finally he subdued Agavamalla. The third son, Veera Rajendra, continued and he did one more expedition to Sri Vijaya and he defeated Chalukya in 5 battles. And again, his son Adi Rajendra ruled for a short period and after that it went into confusion. At the time, Kulothunga, who was the three-generation relative of Rajaraja, the direct descendant from Vengi branch, he took over and then he continued and established. He ensured that the victories done by the continuous wars of this fight are stabilized and made into a stable country. How it was done? So this is done by the feudatories who protected the core area. So at the time, the Cholas was covering this area. But if you see their core area, they had lot of relatives here, like Muttariyar, Irkovediyars, Paduvettariyar, Vanar, Sambuvariyar, Malayman, and Kadavariyar, and Miladuriyar. They had relationship with royalty by exchanging brides. If you see this is the core Chola Delta country, which has been there from ages, and then this is where all the richness and other the rice delta culture and all the skill sets are there. So, if you see the location, geographical location of the feudatories, Muttarayars, Irukuvadis, Paduvettarayar here, and then Vanar in this area, west, Sambuvariyar in the northwest, Malayman Tirupurambiyam in the north side, and Kadavarayars and the Mangalam again in the north side, and Miradudayar in Kadalur. So they had a protective belt around the core area which handled invasions from Mysore side or Konkan side or Andhra side or from Assam. So everybody had to fight, clear these people and then only come into Chola core territories. So with this kind of feudatories, when Rajaraja came into place, he did lot of capture and built a beautiful second line of vassals by his victories around Tamil Nadu and expanded his reach to southern Kerala side, northern side of South Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, as well as South Konkan side. So this is his Maikirti, the praise song, which is another creation of Rajaraja. So this creation or the praise song so this creation of the praise song, which explains some amount of praise and some amount of the actual deeds, historical deeds they had done, started with Rajaraja and it continued for a long period with other kings. So it's a very interesting insight into what kind of countries is captured. So if you see this talks about Vengi Nadu and then Gangapadi, Nolambapadi, Tadigai Vadi, Kollam, Kalingam, Kadamari Nadu, and after covering the Pandyas, he became owning the entire belt. So with this, if you see the country, in addition to the core Chola area, and with the vassals around this, Rajaraja built a nice buffer of vassals who were defeated and supported under feudatory system and also as a suzerainty. These vassals paid tribute and then they were under the protection of Rajaraja. So these were Rajaraja Yadavas in Kalagasti, Telugu Cholas here, and then Vaidumbas on northwest, and then Gangarayas, Nolambas on the western side, and the western Gangas here in Talakadu, and then Adimans on the Kongu bypass, and Krishnagiri area, and Kongu Cholas who were there in the Coimbatore protecting the Palakkad Pass. So all the passes around this vast area of mountain, the entry points are protected by vassals, whom he has defeated and gotten in control by continuous wars. So this gives another protection layer around the core country. This is how he built and planned the expand empire. So when the country was at its peak during Rajendra's period, we had four layers of country. So one is the core Tanjavur area, and then we had the vassals, and then we had the protective area around it, and then total vassals. And in addition, we had Chola influence areas where he has invaded and he had some control on the things, and then he collected dues. So that covers your Nicobar and the southern Sri Lanka, Keda and Sri. So here, wherever these are not under direct control, but these had large merchant network. So if any issues, disputes or anything happen to this merchant network, Cholas intervened and ensured that they are protected. So instead of giving direct revenue from the state getting dues, the revenue was from the merchants who were doing trade with these countries. This also expands why Rajendra took an expedition to Ganges. People attribute this to two reasons. One, his desire to go to Ganges and prove his valor and come back with water from Ganges to anoint his capital, new capital. The second one, there were some trade issues between Vengi and some amount on the Kaligas and the trade from Calcutta. So he also wanted to have an upper hand in the trade. That's why the attacks are predominantly on the other competitors, Kalingas and then lower Vengi and as well as Bengal. This Mekirti or Prasasti, he explains the full details on what he has done in terms of countries, in terms of kings, and in terms of locations he has won. He covers Sakrakotam, Madurai Mandalam, and then he destroys Namanikodam and Pachapalli, Masunadesam, and then Indradattan, Adinagar, and he creates Vodara Vijayanagara, and then he goes to Kosala, and then Dandabukti, Takkolam, Bangaladesam, Uttaradam, where he takes water from Ganges and then comes back and then through Kalinga, Panchapalli. Interestingly, on the way forward, he bypasses Vengi, where their dispute is going on, where the Chalukyas have an upper hand. So he adjusts with the Chalukyas and then doesn't go into a dispute and then proceeds. But on the way back, he also takes the Vengi prince along with him. And on the way back, Rajendra comes from here and his general and Vengi king prince comes here. So they handle Chalukyas and then they put the Vengi prince in Vengi throne and then they secure this area also. So this is a very planned and a very detailed expedition where around 2,500 to 3,000 kilometers travel with the logistics was possible. After this, and Kulothunga, the decline starts. Kulothunga, whatever the rapid expansion, he controls it and keeps it into a structure and focuses more on core areas where he can retain and control with the predatory vassals and slowly leaves control of other areas where maintaining is a costly affair and it is not possible. With this kind of an approach, he was able to sustain the Chola Empire for more time. Then the decline slowly starts. We lose Kalinga, Vengi, Ceylon. Hoysala becomes stronger and they start interpreting in Tamil Nadu politics. Vassals become dependent. Kanji repeated by everybody. Almost everybody comes to Kanji, occupies for some time, where Kumbakonam and the capital is hardly 200 kilometers away. Continues war with Pandyam, left hand side. So he tires old Kulothunga. By the time Pandyas step out and then start invading after Kulothunga III. So this is how the king's genealogy works out. After Kulothunga, Vikrama rules and Kulothunga II and then Rajaraja II period. He did some amount of fighting and then had control. And after that, Rajaraja from a direct line, different line took over. And finally, the last strong king was Kulothunga, who had very repeated wars during his lifetime. He had a very long reign, 40 years, and the entire time was spent in wars and stabilizing things. And with that, the dynasty eroded with Rajaraja III and Rajendra III not doing much work. And finally, Rajendra was defeated in 1257 and he didn't have any heir. And then apparently the Chola dynasty ended and it was annexed to Pandyas. So this is the decline part. When we see the wars undertaken by the Chola armed forces, there are four types. One, wars of expansion and territory. This is just to add more territory to it, and then which was under the direct rule. This is where the Pandyas, Gangas, Nodambas, Cheras were done. Again, Chalukyas, they will rule for some time, and then again it will be taken back by Chalukyas. It was a bone of contention at that point of time. Again, there are expeditions who were surgical straight. This is done primarily to secure trade routes. Sri Vijay Empire attack, Kalinga, Maldives attack, all these things comes into this one. So they don't go on rule. This is just a warning and ensure that nothing happens to the merchant community. The third one is the raids and destroy and plunder. So again, this is a method of accumulating wealth and supplies. So typically they brought idols, riches, and uh, people for doing work, and many of the temples were also built by these forces. They brought large tranche of elephants, metals, and then labor, the captured prisoners, for building their temple building and other activities also. And also the conflicts were internal security, and then they had a merchant army, which ensured that the merchants traveled safely, and then they also controlled the excess duty in terms of influx, and then they charged for the security of the merchants. Now, let us see how this kind of a Chola army, people talk so much, and particularly in Tamil Nadu, they are so passionate, they go overboard. They say that Chola had large fleets which can fight with any group, and then they had ships which can handle 1,000 elephants. That kind of weird stories. But what exactly is the size? One of the references from Chinese geographer around 1225 is that they had 60,000 war elephants, and they had houses full of soldiers who fought at close quarters and long range also. Again, one of the vassals of Western Chalukya, during the Rajendra Chola war, he accuses Rajendra of other big practices in burning and going on a rampage on Donavara. In that, he said that he arrived with a force of 9,55,000. So this is the number he is quoting. So this gives an indication not from our supporters, our passionate, fantastic imagination. It is from a neutral third party and from the enemy. We can take it as a benchmark and let us see how we can validate based on the Chola Army organization and how it is prospered. When we talk about Chola Army structure, they had typically all the four kind of war units as padais, Gajas, Tura, the cavalry, Kaladpade infantry, and Talapadai, this is ground level forces, Musipadai, this is the front scouts, and Maruthuvarani. So this is your Padai. This is your regular army. In addition, they had Nadap. This is the infrastructure. This is the commissariat for supply of food and equipment with movement, evacuation, hospitalization. So this is the logistics part. Then again, Payanam. This is your administration. This is equivalent to your military canteen, which procures and then which handles and then which supplies and maintenance of equipment. So border roads organization, all this comes into this. Military engineers group. This is the Payanam group. So they had thought through this in the earlier times. It is not only just army, it is the support infrastructure. And they had Kadagams. This is garrisons. When we talk about Bangalore cantonment or your Marangimalai, it's a cantonment. That's a military location where permanently military is stationed. They give salary, they do practice, they train, and then they take part in peacetime activities. So later period, prior to Rajaraja, this was not a concept. Farmers and Vedalas used to do farming, and during war time, they used to take spear and sword and then start fighting. there is no formation. Here there is formation, this is military training, and then approach, and wherever there is a lot of trouble, like in Pandya countries and in the Chera and in frontier borders, they had cantonments and colonies. This is a permanent garrison. Where there is the small one, this is the actual colony where there is a military cantonment and then with the permanent garrison living with family. So Singavala had 5 Nilaipurams and then they were usually named under the kings, Sundara, Kulasekara, Vikrama, Veera, or Parakrama, and others. So interestingly, this helped in having control, and this Nilaipurams, particularly the one in Kotar and others, they also did maintenance of the temples, and then they have given, the generals have given a lot of grants to the temples. Now, interestingly, the question is, we see the three major ones. What happened to the chariot force, which was normally mentioned in Ardhasastra and other areas? Chariots, particularly in the wild countries of undulating countries of India, and with the advent of elephants, the chariot as a force becomes redundant, and slowly by first, second centuries by Gupta, the usage of chariots for warfare is slowly neglected because the elephants can easily crush chase and it is very difficult to maintain in uneven roads. When we talk about the organization, this is how it was structured. The king is a head of army or padai, and he had 3 or 4 senas who was headed by the Senadipati. Then you had varied number of talams. So normally one sena may contain 3 or more talams, which is being done by Talapati, not our Vijay or somebody else. It is Talapati is a general. Because younger generation knows Talapati means Jaya Vijay Vijay, nothing else. And each talam has got 3 units, which is called by Anipati. The modern day equality is a colonel. So each unit is again a composition of multiple army units. So this had 3 Yanai Padais, each one having 500 elephants. And people around 13,500 to manage, support, man, and surround the elephants. And each, it also contained 3 horse units, Kudrai Padai, having 1,000 horses, and Kudrai Sevaka 27. So one horse had 27%. Again, this is not 27% riding. It is horse surrounding by its own support group and maintenance group and reserve warriors as well as horse attendants. It also had Kalad Padai infantry, 3,000 men to each Padai. So if you see this, for one Senai, if we take, we had 3 Senai, 3 talams, and then 9 Anis, and then for each of the 9 Anis, total of around 13,500 elephants. And cavalry had 27,000 total cavalry, I'm sorry. And Kalad Padai had 162,000 people. So if you total for 9, in addition, you had your Talapadai auxiliary, which is around 36,000, men and again 1,000 horses. In addition, 300 doctors. And Wusi Padai, which is the regional fighting force, which is spying and then handle enemy withdrawal and sabotage activities. So if you total, it comes around how much? 162 plus 31, around 190, 200,000, and then 200, 250, 3 lakhs, around 3 lakhs for one Senai. So when 3 Senais are going, the number might be around 9 lakhs. So it tallies with what the visualization the Chalukyas had. In addition to the Chola army, they had regiments with very specific names which have been mentioned in many of the inscriptions. So with this, we understand that they had different types of calves which was under the structure which I explained earlier. So we had elephant corps called Aanai Pagar, Aanai Atkal, archers, Therinde Villigal, cavalry, Kudire Sevagargal, light infantry called Parivaratar, Velakara Padagal, securities. And then these Velakara Padagal, these are king's personal force, like our secret service, which protects the American president. And in addition, they had securities and then other external security forces. So this is how various regiments were organized. In addition, there is no simple structure. They had pride, they had liberty, and it is like a very good product organization, free and fun, and at the same time going aggressive. So the kings got hands-on experience during their early time, and then in many times they laid on elephant back. Crown princes trained along with the kings in admin as well as warfare, so they know what it is when they become kings. Again, from Rajaraja period, the strategy is the king secures the core delta area, and most of the expeditions are done by crown prince for getting their experience and based on their youth. Generals were credited and given their share of glory with a lot of inscriptions measuring their achievements. Many generals did endowment, they got their own areas and places as grants, and then they also built temples for the memory of the king. They had their own corporate life. The Velekar, the king's regiment, was a pride, and then actually they had attachment to the king. And if the king dies in spite of their protection, they will also end their life. So that is the kind of pride they had. In addition, like I said, from Rajaraja period, slowly, army became a regular institution, not a part-time job. So the cantonments and Nilaypurams during peacetime, they did lot of work on temple maintenance, temple cleaning, creating new lakes, like Viranam built during Rajaraja period. And they lived in harmony with the occupant country. So when there is a cantonment in Andhra, and these people are helping the local temple maintenance, building lakes and supporting them, slowly they win the support of the local country who favor Cholas rather than their own king who lost. So this is again subtle control. Commanders, they had their own name, but again they wore the name of the king with the pride with the status. Like Rajaraja Chola Brahmarajan, Radhakesari Moovendran, Jayakonda Cholan Villa Kurayar, Moovendra Velan, Manukula Moovendra Velan, Nitya Vinod Moovendra Velan. Mummudi Chola Pallavarayar, like that, Veeranarayana movement. Like that, people, generals, commanders served two, three kings continuously, and then they were respected and then they were referred in all critical matters by the king because he has been in service since his father's time. So, what we saw in the last 7 or 8 slides is the structure, how the Chola army was expanded and defined into a very good military machine. With this foundation and with what Rajaraja and Rajendra started, the three brothers continued the story. These three brothers of Rajendra ruled one after other, and then they were Yuvarajas when his brother was a king, and they continued the wars and then stabilized whatever Rajendra has in one shot expanded into a big reach. One of the critical wars which showcased the military structure and prowess is the Koppam War of 1054. It is one of the regular skirmishes which happened between Someshwara Agavamalla. He is the person who takes the record like Gajini for doing maximum wars with Cholas, countless. And one of the key wars in the early wars of Agavamalla, the battle happens again in a near a river and in a place called Koppal where there is a fort and it is very near the later period Tungabhadra river, Hampi. So Agavamalla comes from the western Chalukya and to oppose here is Chola Rajaraja, who is the king, and his brother and crown prince Rajendra is also behind him. Again, Agavamalla wants to somehow defeat it because earlier 2, 3 times, this time he was hell bent on doing it. He puts the entire force of multiple generals around Rajaraja. And this is where Cholas also again failed in the standard formation and protective ring around the king, and the king passionately leading to the front. So what happened is Rajaraja is surrounded and killed in a valuable fight, and he dies. So here, unlike Takkolam War, where the death of the king, the Cholas panicked and lost their will, here there is an interesting case of military leadership and ensured that the strategic victory is achieved. What happened is, on his death, Rajendra comes into forefront, immediately crowns himself, and turns the tide by announcing that your king is not dead, he is here, he is live and fight. So, the Cholas rally around him and then turn a veritable loss into a total success. And most of the generals of Agavamalla was killed and he goes back. Again, Agavamalla doesn't leave there, like I said earlier, continues the war throughout all the three brothers' reign, and finally, in old age, unable to handle the defeats, he drowns himself in Tungabhadra. And ultimately, Vikramaditya is the one who achieves suzerainty over Chola in his later battles. So Chola continues with the Chalukya. Again, the Tungabhadra river seems to be the border between Chalukyas and Chalukyas, where even during Kulothunga time, this border they cross, sometimes they occupy, but they reoccupy. This is going on 5 till end, till Chalukyas vanish. So finally, this skirmish or the enmity ends during Vikramaditya's sixth time, where he marries Veera Rajendra's daughter and visits GKC and helps him to ascend the throne of Cholas. So those who were fighting for a long, long period, in the end, they also become friends in some part. Again, it was not a good strategy and it also backfires. Now, before we go into Kalinga and the wars of Kalinga, which the Kulothunga was famous for, let us understand Kalinga and Vengi and the relationship of this to the conflict between the Cholas and the Chalukyas. Okay. So, when we talk about Vengi and Kaligas, this is the area beyond Vijayawada all the way up to Bengal. This is a very rich area and interestingly, like Kerala, on one hand, it is constrained by the Eastern Ghats, very, very strong mountains, and a fairly not narrow, a larger belt of land, more than double that of Kerala. So this is the land which forces people to come in this route because if you come by this, there is always the Pandyas. So this is where the maximum wars happen. The earliest thing is the Vengi Chalukyas. They were there from 642, where Chalukya Vikramaditya, Satyasarya Pulakesi starts a branch by appointing his brother, and it stays till 11 when it is annexed. So this is centered around Eluru as the capital. Then there is a northern Kalinga, which is ruled by Eastern Gangas from early 500 things. So they descend from the Western Gangas and then they move over here. The Western Gangas is somewhere over here and then they move over from here and get settled. Their capital is Mukalingam or Kalinga Nagara. So this is their area and Srikakulam and this is our their beaches. Again, there is Shailodbhavas. So there is a South Kalinga in between, which for some time ruled by separate Telugu kings. They call them as Bhimas. And then their capital is probably somewhere near Kakinada. In addition, when we talk about Kalingas, Shailodbhavas, who claim that they come from stone, they are strong like a stone. They are one dynasty which ruled from 6th to 8th century, and then they were having their capital in Banapur. And then there was the Bhavamakaras who started from 8th century to 10th century and who had their capital in Bigga, current day Bigga. Again, there was a later period, Somavanshi, which started from 9th to 12th centuries. They had their capital in Jodhpur. So, if you see this, the key area of influence moved from Mukalingam, Banapu, and then to Benka, and then Jajpur, and finally, when Anandarman Chodaganga won all these areas one by one, he moved the capital from Mukalingam to Vidnasi. So from then, from 11th century till 17th century, 18th century, it remained as the capital. So you see the context of this. Primarily, this is primarily to get clarity on, when we talk about Kalinga, Kalinga is not one country. There are so many kings, so many regions, so many locations. So what Cholas won as Kalinga and what is the sequence need to be seen from this perspective. So when we talk about Kalinga War of Kulothunga Chola, there are two distinct wars. One, the Kalinga War of 1096, which happened around Vengi. Again, that is due to a lot of small battles from South Kalinga and suppression of Chola merchant groups. So Kulothunga wanted to separate this, and at the time, to control this, Vikrama Chola was the governor of Vengi. So since he was young, Southern Kalinga king Bhima thought he will oppress him and then invaded, along with the Kolanu, the local feudatory. So it was defense by Vikrama Chola, and his support, Parandaka Pandya, who was a Pandya under Cholas, was also there to support him, and the war took place somewhere near this region. This is the core Kolanu country, and finally it was beat. So outcome is that South Kalinga again become a feudatory, and Vengi control becomes stronger in this area. So this is useful in sustaining control in a remote area when the next war, Kalinga War, happened again 10 years later. Sadasiva Pandar, when we talk about Kolanu, earlier people refer this Kolanu as a big lake here. But whereas Sadasiva Pandaratar talks about Kolanu as Srikakulam, which is almost near the Vengi or the North Kalinga capital. So if it had been North Kalinga capital, definitely the North Kalinga king would have intervened at that particular time. So it doesn't show logical. Then we come to the second war of Kalinga, 1112. Again, this is again due to maritime and prestige issues, where the Kalinga king is a maternal grandchild of Kulothunga. Again, he did not pay the tribute and duties, and on top of it, the Chola ships were charged additional preferential duties in Kaliga ports. So, to control and then teach a lesson, this time Kulothunga didn't come. His famous general, who took part in his earlier expeditions, Karnagara Tondaman, the famous one, the hero of Kadalpura fame, Karnagara Tondaman, took this initiative and he invaded. He came all the way from this one, and then he took additional support in Eluru, which is Vengi under Chola control, and the earlier defeated Bhima and other kings also supported them. So he attacked directly the capital. Capital at that time was Mukalingam or Kalingapatna, which is near Srikakulam. So this is their traditional capital from 4th to 5th century till 12th century. So the fight happened. Initially, the Kalingan chief minister, army chief, and others were fronting it, and then they were defeated. And finally, Anantavarma himself he came into the fight, and then he was defeated and he was captured. In addition, there is a story and some references that the earlier governor of Chola, one of the sons, Veera Chola, have given his daughter to Anandavarma Chodaganga, and he was staying with his son-in-law, and he was also doing some advisory support during this old age. So Chodaganga was captured and tribute extracted. Interestingly, when we talk about Kalingan War, the people in Tamil Nadu and general historians, what they have in mind is they went all the way up to Bhubaneswar. It is not true. This is a fallacy, or still not many people understand this. The capital and Chola base was at Kalingapatna, Mukalingam, where he get maximum inscriptions. He doesn't get any inscriptions in Bhubaneswar. And the capital was shifted to this one primarily to safeguard and other things at a later point of time. Again, Cholas did not achieve any long-term benefit. After some time, slowly they lost all the countries, and then Vengi also is lost. In fact, this kind of expeditions helped Chodaganga a lot. This frequent skirmishes slowly weakened the other Kalinga kings, and then gradually he captured one by one Shailodbhavas, Bhaumakara, and others, and finally he captured Cuttack, Bhubaneswar, the entire area. He became Trikalingadipati, and that is where he shifted his capital to Cuttack. So this is pre-shifting of Cuttack period war. So now coming to the final war. If you see the earlier war with Pandyas, it used to happen near Pudukkottai border. This is where the common area between this and this is where. Now, with the power of Cholas declining and the Pandyas giving this one, most of the wars were happening in the Sivaganga, Tondi, this area, with active support from Sri Lanka. So there is a shift in pattern. So Sri Lanka continuously supports military, and they had invisible control by sending their Dandanayaka and supporting with Pandya princes. And the skirmishes happening in this zone, not in this zone. So start with Rajendra during Rajaraja period in Tondi, this is somewhere near this, there is a conflict where General Annan Pallavarayan defeats Singhala generals and Veerapandya. This Veerapandya is another Veerapandya down the line. So Pandyas had the custom of naming Veerapandya and Palakrama Pandyas. There are many. So Veerapandya is lost and they crown Kulasekara as the king. It lasts 8 hours, 8 years, and slowly Kulasekara is also influenced by Sri Lankans. And then again, Rajaraja sends one more general, Annan Pallavarayan, who defeats Singhala Kulasekara, and Madurai is given back to Veerapandya. Now, Veerapandya says that I am loyal, I will be. Again, 5 years continues. The new king, Vikrama, who is the son of Kulothunga, proposes, and Veerapandya again gets aligned with the Singalas. This time, Kulothunga is the king and he is infuriated. He goes direct to Madurai and then defeats them, and then he raises Madurai. So this frequent pardons and the destruction of Madurai this time triggered the resurgence and lot of vengeance. Then the next war here this time, Veerapandya comes back with the Chera support, and then they were defeated near Nittu in this area. And the Vikrama continues. This time, instead of killing them, he pardons Veerapandya and Chera. Later, another 12-14 years goes. By the time Vikrama dies and his son Jatavarma Kulasekara takes place, and he also gets aligned with Sri Lanka. So again, there is a war somewhere near Tirupurambiyam area in which Kulothunga defeats Kulasekara, Veerapandya, and gives the interesting part is after defeating Jadavarma Kulasekara, he gives it back to him after 3 years to, with the condition that he rules it properly and gives the dues. But the Pandyas don't get quiet. They were after vengeance. They frequently supported Singalas and then turned back on the Chola support who have been magnanimous with them. And when Kulothunga dies and the next king starts, the brother of Jatavarma Kulasekara, Maravarman Sundara Pandya, who is a more professional warrior king, he defeats Rajaraja III and destroys Tanjavur. And he burns Chola country and gives graphic description. But again, he gives to him very soon, primarily because of the Hoysala connection and the Hoysala army in Kannada. Because Rajaraja III has married a Hoysala prince and the Mamadar or the father-in-law is pushing for restoration. So again, he gave it back to them. Here is where a conflict. Normally, our Nilakanta Shastri and others says that Maravarman Sundarapandian defeated Kulothunga, whereas Sadasiva Pandata says that Kulothunga died in the earlier year and it was only Rajaraja who got defeated. And finally, in 1257, Rajaraja III lives for some time and then Rajendra III comes in and he again rebels. In 1257, the next king, Jatavarma Sundara Pandya, defeats him convincingly. So Chola becomes a vassal to Pandyas. And in 1279, when Rajendra III dies, it is annexed to Pandyas. So this ends a glorious chapter of Chola countries. Okay. When we talk about the military, we talked about two aspects. One, the army. The second interesting part is the navy. It has got references from Pericles times about the early activities, merchant ships with valuable cargoes, rudimentary flamethrowers, catapults, which were with armed personnel. Famous historian Majumdar says that the Chola ships were not traditional warships of the category, and the Cholas used them more as army troop carriers and most of their wars were land-based war and with the minimal seafare. So we don't see any seafare done in a predominant way in Chola history. Again, there is no inscriptional evidence, iconographical details about how the Chola army looked like, navy looked like, the kind of ships, but only some description needs. So this is one of the models of the ships of the time, reconstructed from Ajanta paintings. And this is one of the models visualized by Government of India, which they use in their stamps, somewhat similar. So this is a bigger kind of vessels which they might have used. When we talk about Navy, they had a similar structure like the army, where the king is the chief of Kadalpade, with the Jalapati, a naval chief, and it has got multiple fleets, Pirivu, where Adipati or Nayakan, and the modern equivalent of Admiral. And then each Pirivu or fleet had multiple Ganams, squadrons, and it is headed by a Ganadipati or a Rear Admiral. Again, each Ganam has got a carrier group, which is Mandalam, called Mandalam, and it is called Mandaladipati or Vice Admiral. And it has got number of vessels, Kalam, and the captain is called Kalapati. So let us see how the Kalam, the base vessel of a navy, was structured. It had multiple officers like Kapu, which is equal to the modern day executive officers or weapon officer, and CY, which is a engineering corps, and ETMAR, which is a major or captain in marines. They had multiple types of ships. Marakalam, which is large, and Dhoni with no deck and only one mast, which is around 70 feet long, and Kalabam, Vedi, Padagu. This is where these types are mentioned in one of the inscriptions in Krishnapatnam in 13th century. So, how they were used? They were used as battleships with the flamethrower and catapult, ocean-going troopers with large quantities, quarters, elephants, and other things, used as royal ships, cargo, and landing craft. So, mostly, like I said earlier, the wars were fought in land where they land and then they fight and capture enemy towns, or mostly in littoral. Interestingly, they also had a naval auxiliary force, which is a unit of merchants. So they did some amount of peacetime patrol and then escort trades, and they did conversion of merchant ships in case of need for naval support, and they also did customization of captured enemy battleships. So this is how the Chola fleet went with a set of basic fleet of ships, and then they accumulated more and more on the way from friendly ports. This auxiliary force also did battles close to home port, typically around their own area, and protected their littoral zone. And they established beachheads, and then they also did sometime espionage activities and did sabotage. Chola merchant ships also did support and gave a lot of information on the opponent activity to the Chola Navy, which was very useful. Again, this Chola Navy was supported by a strong mercantile groups, which did in wholesale and retail. So this is one of the key successes of Cholas, the merchants. There were Nana Desis, they were from Pallava times, and then doing overseas trade. And then there were Manikramatar, they are primarily capital merchants. They worked in Kavaripumbatnam, Kodumbalur area, and then they worked in cities, and then they did city control also. Again, there are volunteers from Sri Lankan Buddhist and other things. They did a lot of work and maintenance of temples. And there is a foreign group, Anjivanatar, primarily Arabs, Mohammedan, Jews, Christians, Parsis settled, and then they do trade with Arab as well as Western India. So they were predominantly in the southeastern coast from Pumbugar down the line in Pandi country. Again, there is a Chitrameli Perinatar who are primarily focusing on agricultural produce based trading. And then they were predominant around in the Chola core belt in Arilu. Again, the king of all, the largest of all is the Ayavoli Ainut River. So this is an international guild. They had their own name. They had their Dharma, Veera Banaju Dharma. They had their flag, bull flag. And then they had done a lot of temple building, like Kaneswaram Temple in Guangzhou in China, and Sumatra, they had military navy. It mentions, inscription mentions Nagara Senadipati, not Chettiar. Slowly, they controlled all the merchant groups. Puranmalai inscription talks about a meeting of all mercantile groups to contribute to the temple. So in that it mentions 18 Yerivira Pattanam. This is our mercantile towns. Valarpuram, the feeder towns, and 64 Kadiri Valam, which is the source points and the initial procurement points. So what was the Ayavale Ainur absorbed other organizations like Nana Desi, Manikara Amatar and others who aligned with them and finally become a large Nana Desi Desai Ayirathu Ainur. So they go to multiple nations, they go to all 1,000 directions, and then the core is 500 merchants. Later period, when the famous Kulothunga abolished excess duty, what he technically did was to support his merchants who favored his ascending the throne. He abolished excess duty, but at the same hand, he is smart. He also slowly withdraw the support of the mercantile travel force and asked mercantile army to manage their own forces. So by 12th century, merchants started building their own mercantile army, like Valanji Senapati, Nana Devi Siddhanta and others. Now, coming back to the Rajendra's expedition, what is the reason? At the time, there were three major powers in Southeast Asia. India, with the Chola, Kalinga, and Bangadesa doing trade with China. They had two routes. One, the sea route, and other, the Silk Route, which is the arduous route through the mountains and forests. In between, Srivijaya is in the middle of the trade route to China. So, Srivijaya started controlling and blocking all the maritime links to China. And China was pushing to avoid the Silk Route and use the sea route. It is creating a lot of conflict. In this, the Srivijaya group started differential excise duty to Ayyavolya and Manikramam for heavy duty for the Indian trade. So they wanted to do trade with China, so they were suppressing Indian trade. So probably Ayyavolya and Manikramam complained to Cholas and then they wanted support. What Kulothunga did is, he did a series of diplomatic and offensive initiatives, like how Modi is doing nowadays. Early till early days, only Kalinga was dominant, and it was mentioned in Javanese script as visitors from East Coast. Now we see in inscriptions the Dravidas and Cholikas, this is Cholas. By 800, Takupa, the Kalai Takkolam, is a settlement for Manigrama very soon. So the Takupa is very important primarily because this is where the people drop anchor from sea route, cross over to the land route, come here in Ligar, and proceed further to Khmer Champa without going through Srivijaya. So that setup was there since 800, and then 1005 Srivijaya gives envoy to both Cholas and Chinas. 1010 Cambodia gives an envoy. And 1015, Rajendra sends an envoy. But again, when this envoy goes by Sri Vijaya, they do a reconnaissance. And finally, in 1017, Chola do a small experimentation naval attack on Kedah. Then 1017, the merchants' protection triggers them to attack Kerala, Malabar ports, and then they travel 1,000+ kilometers to Maldives. So they are familiar with the kind of long distance warfare. Again, the parley continues with he getting Sri Vijaya gifts for Hindu temple, and and Chinese finally the straw is Chinese emperor pushing merchants to shift from the road-based Silk Road to Silk Road of Sea. So that puts pressure on the Chola trade. 1025, Rajendra does an expedition to Kedah, Sri Vijaya and Java ports and defeats Sri Vijaya kingdom. From then, there was no invite to China and its power gets reduced for some time. Again, in 1067, there is one more expedition to Kedah to handle dispute between Sri Vijaya brothers. In 1070, Kulothunga himself go to China to dispute issues between Sri Vijaya and others, where Chola is registered as a fugitive and other things, and then he fights it. In 1114, Suryavarma, the builder of Angkor Wat, sends a precious stone to Kulothunga. So this is the kind of relationship Chola naval and government had. On one hand, they had diplomatic discussions. Wherever it failed, wherever they wanted, they also had naval battles. One such campaign is the Rajendra Chola's campaign of 1025. So he starts from here, and probably he might have started with a minimal set of vessels, and then he had branches or merchant establishments all over this place. So he slowly goes one by one, accumulates more and more ships, and then strengthens his naval army, visits Lamuri, captures it, Kedah base, and then he goes to Talakappa, and then he visits Maridangam, Ilangesam, Tamarlinga, all these areas, captures them one by one, and then goes into mainland. In mainland, first he captures Pannai, and then Jambi, and finally he visits Sri Vijay. This is a logical sequence. Some of the historical authors, they say that he went directly here, attacked Sri Vijaya, and then started covering other areas. That would not have been a logical thing, because once he is running around, there will be a definite backlash from the Sri Vijaya on his way back. Again, this thing was beautifully enacted in almost like a true fashion in the second attack by Kadalpura, a naval fiction story by Sandilwood. This is a fantastic one and graphically explains a similar activity where Kulothunga's general Karanagara Tondaman is the hero, where Kulothunga plays the second fiddle. Again, to sum up, to see the Chola progression, the early Cholas were part-time armies mostly maintained by feudatories and consolidated based on needs and no structured military academy or regiments. But by Rajaraja times until Imperial Chola, it changed into a full-time army. Mercenary units needed recruited on the fly, naval force formed, permanent regiment in strategic places, refined the military practices like the cordons and rings around the king and formed things where the practice leadership transition, like identifying the prince ahead of time and the princes taking part in wars at an early stage themselves. So feudatory is under control. When it comes to later period Cholas after Kulothunga, when the excess is slowly removed, the merchants start building their own army. And the buffer zone of vassals gets lost one by one. The feudatories become big and then they start fighting among themselves and then alliance group and then start fighting. It goes into such a thing that one of the feudatories captures Chola king and keeps in prison. And then finally, Hoysalas have to come and then release them. So finally, it is shrunk into only the core delta and then nothing else, and with a small army. So this is how the small army was expanded and maintained into a very large imperial army, and which declined over a period when the core practices were stopped. You can see it in the extent of the Chola rule, where it was like this during Rajaraja period, only this much, and then Eastern Chalukya was give and take, and then frequently changed hands. During Rajendra period, he rapidly expanded here, and then he went all the way, and then to Southeast Asia. What Kulothunga did was he cut off all these things, and then ensured that the core area is in their hands, and then it is sustainable. So by this action, he ensured that it survived till 1279, at least in a decent way. To sum up, how Chola military might survive 400 years, transition from an emotional fighting unit to disciplined thing, structured succession plan, particularly members of a royal family did their earlier exposure in war fronts, and then they were also administering regions. Many Chola princes were ruling Kalinga, they were ruling Pandya, they were ruling Sri Lanka, and they were ruling Ganga countries. They had very good feudatory chiefs around the core country, and then marriage alliances with the neighboring countries, and excellent military and navy to protect trade. By this, they also built a very good buffer zone of vassals around Tamil Nadu area border so that any invasion he has to clear the vassals and then feudatories, then only he touches the core country. So that is why the core country of Cholas was not into military action for a period of 200-300 years and remained safe till Pandyas invaded it. Again, it also gives credit to Kulothunga Chola's strategic decision to consolidate what Rajendra, Rajaraja and his three sons have expanded and to get only taxes from areas of influence. This extended the life of Chola might by another 100 years. So this is a brief talk on how Cholas had an excellent military for 400 years, how they managed it along with navy, army, and merchant forces, and then how it is structured, and some of the interesting battles of Chola. Thanks for listening patiently to this. And if you find this very interesting, you can subscribe to my Babu for Heritage channel and share it with others and help spread the heritage awareness to the next generation. Thank you for a little long presentation, but definitely it is needed to give a good flavor of how the Chola Army, Navy, and merchant forces integrated together and built a strong force to reckon with for 400 years. So we look forward to seeing more such videos and then see you till we meet next time in another extending videos. Have a great day.